everyone, and welcome. As we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to begin the conference by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we're on today. It's important to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improve our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. Let's Stop AIDS also acknowledges that it operates out of Toronto, the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit River, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Please join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms of the past and to consider how we can each try to move forward in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration.
Hello everybody, welcome to our first edition of No Time to Wait, our inaugural conference focusing on youth HIV leadership and grassroots activism. I'm Shaman, the founder and president for Let's Stop AIDS, Canada's youth HIV charity. We're here today to share stories, personal journeys, experiences, questions that we may have about youth and HIV issues. I thought I'd kick it off by telling everyone my story. I founded Let's Stop AIDS when I was 15 at my local high school. I started it because simply no one was talking about HIV. It was a topic that was taboo and never discussed. I brought the idea up to my principal. She said if I was starting a scam or something. I asked my friends, and they said they were just simply too busy. Through a bit of pushing and shoving, Let's Stop AIDS has been able to persevere over these 16 years into becoming an organization that is focusing specifically on youth involvement and meaningful engagement in the youth HIV space. Canada's HIV situation has been on a steady rise, specifically for young people. A quarter of HIV infections are young people. Today, we're here to really question what we are as a community in terms of leadership and activism. When we identify who we truly are, we need to identify those parts of ourselves that are passionate about these issues and how to present them in our own unique way. Today, we're also here to dare ourselves. We're here to dare ourselves as a unique community of individuals who are multifaceted to work in very unique spaces. At Let's Stop AIDS, everyone, including myself, and everything you see produced here was all made by volunteers. Passionate individuals who are from different aspects of fields and professionals and educators and learners and students and consultants. Everyone here has come with a unique dare to challenge themselves to be involved in creating something unique. One part that I can say outright, we're not polished, nor do we ever want to be. We believe that the youth HIV field and spectrum is meant to be flexible and meant to be always adapting. Now, for me, all of this comes down to really one big dare. It's about making sure that we as a community, we as individuals are happy and that we're motivated and that we're inspiring not just others but ourselves. I'd like everyone to think for a minute of maybe 2 or 3 distinctive memories when you were happy. Guarantee that every single one involves another person in your life. Now, that is sort of the importance that we're hoping to convey at some point today about some of the stigma that we face relating to HIV, some of the stigma faced relating to working in the field relating to HIV, and some of the misunderstandings and misconceptions about HIV. We're here today to remind everyone to care. To remind everyone, let's learn to listen to each other and respect those around in our communities. Let's be responsible leaders and create environments where burnout is not a badge of honor. Let's remember that Black lives matter. Let's remember that trans lives matter. Let's remember that Indigenous lives matter. Let's remember that young people matter. Putting these issues at the forefront are very important. And the only way we're going to gain awareness for it is to continue speaking and talking and reflecting and brainstorming. These ideas don't need to be ironed out. Some of the best ideas in the world have come through informal conversation. And today, that's what we've created here. We've created a unique space that is open, transparent, and encouraging for feedback. So today, thank you again. I welcome you to No Time to Wait. Welcome you to our space, to just the start of youth HIV involvement, leadership, activism, and we hope there'll be many other Let's Stop AIDS and many other communities and groups. Thank you, everyone, and I cannot wait to see how the next 2 days go. Bye.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura, and this is Saskia, and we are the conference coordinators for No Time to Wait. This conference has been a long time coming, and we've worked extremely hard to put together the event. We're so happy to see you all here today. We do want to go over a few ground rules just in order to enhance everyone's experience and make this a great space for all.
So number one is we respect the inherent choice and autonomy of each speaker, workshop facilitator, moderator, participant, and organizer who has come to this event. Please know that you do not have to disclose anything you don't want to, and similarly, you are not required to go on camera if you do not want to.
Please be careful not to interrupt others when they are speaking during workshop sessions. We understand this can be difficult given lags in audio responsiveness or video streaming. Those can make it unclear when participants start or stop speaking. Despite this, please mute your microphone if you are not speaking, and please remain mindful of disrupting background noise that may occur when you are speaking.
Be patient with speakers, workshop facilitators, moderators, and other participants, and allow some grace to miscommunications. With that being said, we will not tolerate blatant discrimination from any person involved in the conference.
Display respectful behavior and digital citizenship, which includes respecting the contributions and opinions of all others at all times.
Please refer to the reception area and Hoban if any on the platform.
If you do have any technical difficulties, please contact nttw@letsstopaids.org or give us a call at 416-231-2333, extension 666, should you have any issues throughout the weekend. We're always here to help.
And we can link those in the chat as well.
We will, yes.
And if you want to learn more about HIV, COVID-19, and other health and wellness related topics between the conference sessions, then don't forget to check out our resource toolkit, which will be available for viewing all weekend long in the on-demand expo section. Next up, we're going to show you a quick video provided by Taking It Global, who are partnering with to provide grant opportunities for qualifying Let's Stop AIDS participants. You'll be able to learn more about it tomorrow at the Rising Youth Workshop, but this video just gives a little introduction.
Thank you, everyone, and let's have a great weekend.
We have no time to wait. We brought together the kings and queens of pressing issues that don't have time to wait for anyone. COVID-19 has had a ripple effect. We will reflect on how young people have and are playing a key role in this pandemic. HIV leadership has heavily relied on young people to be innovative but stubborn to persevere. We will cover what HIV leadership looks like in 2020 globally. Social media is coin. It influences our lives and decisions we make. We will discuss how fame comes with responsibility. Let's get started.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the session, COVID-19, HIV Leadership, and Social Media Activism. My name is Zoe Berlin, and I'll be the moderator today. I am Nakama, and I am also the Youth Leadership Coordinator for the Canadian Aboriginal AIDS Network. For our session today, we have 4 speakers. The first one will be Grace, who is the founder of the Generation GEM movement. The second will be Raywat, who's an epidemiologist with the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Ottawa. The third will be Randy, who's the Gay Man Sexual Health Coordinator with the Gilbert Centre in Barrie, Ontario. And the fourth will be Travis, a social media activist. Today in this session, we'll be thinking about what it means in the face of COVID-19 to be engaging with youth and engaging in HIV activism. How does social media play into the work? So Grace's video is pre-recorded, and I think that the tech people will get that started for us right away.
Hi, so glad you could join me for this session. It's the No Time to Wait conference, and we're going to have a lot of fun, so let's get straight into it. My name is Grace Chansachungu. I have entitled my presentation Adolescent Health Matters, and I'm from Zambia, specifically in Lusaka. So in Zambia today, we currently have 1.7 million adolescents, okay? And 65,000 of these are estimated to be living with HIV, which only 40,000 are female, which is such a large number from the 65, with only about 60% are on HIV treatment. Only 4 out of 10 adolescents aged 15 to 19 years have comprehensive knowledge of HIV. And despite all the progress that we have made, with HIV burden remains high, and our females are largely affected. So we have over 19,000 males with new HIV infections and 26,000 females with new HIV infections. That's very alarming. And in our country, we don't have much integrated services or regimes that can help these young people. So I am a social worker by profession, and I have worked with adolescents in different parts of Africa. And in every part, I have seen a trend in these young people living with HIV. So it's either depression, peer pressure, stigma, or all of them at once, with other attributing factors. So these are barriers that actually hinder the young people from succeeding in life or just basically adhering to treatment. And every single time I see this, I get devastated because I know these are young people who are full of potential and they have so much to life. So with our organization, which is Generation GEM, we have an integrated approach, which is caring for adolescents, which means adolescent health friendly services in every clinic and facility. We have peer support systems in schools, out of schools, online, you name it. And an integrated life skills approach, which allows comprehensive sexuality education within the education system. So Generation Gem generally has been specifically implementing this approach with two various projects. Our first project, which is Project Takeover, and the second one is Dear Sister Project. I'll zero into the Dear Sister project because that one is specific to this main presentation. I can't wait to talk to you about Project Takeover later on, but let's talk about creating safe virtual counseling services for these young people. So the Dear Sister platform basically just allows young people to come onto the platform on Facebook, which is write-ups are sent out, and videos as well, and YouTube. And every single time a person writes to us, we capture young people living with HIV. For some reason, more of them are female. Of course, we can attribute it back to the statistics we just heard, but we have them come on board into a WhatsApp group, and we offer counseling services on our virtual space. And each time we hear testimonies of these young people performing better because we have a mentorship program and a mentorship approach that allows them to feel one and as a family, okay? And so moving on, the challenge is to capture and mentor over 100,000 young people in and out of school. So we want to grow our virtual space not just by community wise or just by sharing the link with people you know, but we want it to become a national platform. We look forward to it also becoming a household name and allowing every person who has a challenge to access the services that are offered there. So we have trained counselors responding to real issues that these young people are facing. So why not, spread the word out there? So basically, I wanted to show you that social media activism is life-changing. It's changing so many lives, specifically to the young people. I want to give you one example. I had to, but then let's just zero into one, which I love the most. His name, I don't know how to pronounce it because it's from the Zulu tribe in South Africa. And he's a young person who met us when he was defaulting on treatment. He is doing very well right now. I will tell you, he's working with one of the most prominent stations, news stations in South Africa, and he's getting ready for engagement arrangements. He wants to marry and he's ready to settle. But the time he met us, he had a viral load count of over 100,000 copies and the CD4 count of 4. Today, his CD4 count is over 500 and his viral load is undetectable. All this has been through the platform, through the virtual space of mentorship, the safe space we have made available. Who knows, without us reaching out to him or him reaching out to us, we really wouldn't have been able to save his life and the lives of his children now. So I really just wanted to challenge you and give you a perspective of how social media activism can and is changing lives. We can do so much more if we put our efforts together and really reach out to more young people on virtual spaces. I'm going to leave you with an amazing quote from Desmond Tutu. He says, "Do a little bit of good where you are. It's those little bits of good that overwhelm the world." Thank you so much. I am welcome to any questions or clarifications.
Great video. So moving on to our next speaker, this is just a reminder for our speakers that we have about 8 to 10 minutes per presentation. And for those who are listening in, please type your questions into the chat box, and we can get everybody talking about them at the end. So introducing Ray Watt can start his presentation.
Great. Can I share my screen? Is that permitted?
I think yes.
Okay, great. Let me just bring up my presentation here. Okay, can you see my screen, everybody? Okay, there we go. Fantastic. So thanks for having. My voice is leaving me slowly. I've been doing far too much media lately, and my baby is screaming upstairs. So I'll try to make this as pithy and as meaningful as possible. I'll be talking about my impressions and experiences with social media in the COVID era so far. We've only been living in the COVID era for the last 9 months or so, but it's been quite a learning experience. And I want to start with a paper that I read back in 2007. And this was published in the WHO Bulletin, and it was about the lessons we learned from SARS back during that epidemic in the early 2000s. And essentially, that it found three findings. One is that 19th century technologies are good, wearing masks, living in your houses, etc. Number two, oops. Number two, you should say that animal husbandry is bad. We won't get into that right now. The third one I thought was fascinating. That is transparency is key. Messaging is key. So being open with your failings and your intents through messaging is important. We've sort of lost that message in dealing with this pandemic, haven't we? So it got me thinking about what is the role of public health communications, especially in a public health emergency like we have right now, and what we had during HIV/AIDS as well. First, of course, we have to clarify the nature of the emergency. We try to create calmness. We don't want people to panic. We want to tell people about the nature of the public health emergency and what we're doing, and tell them what they need to do. Keep your distance, wear masks, and so forth. If we have timelines, we give them timelines. What we never thought we'd have to do is really educate people about the underlying science. That was rarely part of the plan. It's become part of the plan, but it's become actually a weapon to be used against the other side. And the fact that we have another side is quite concerning. COVID denial, misinformation, and disinformation. And that brings me to a question about the role of public communications. We think we know what it is, but is it really about what we think it is? Is it about changing human behavior, or is it about informing people? Do you see the difference? We can tell people about what the disease is, what they need to do, and so forth, and have faith that their individual adult recognizance will allow them to do the right thing. Or do we structure the message to compel them to behave a certain way, which is the ethical path? As an example, I show you the messaging around cigarette cartons, right? It simply doesn't say this might give you cancer, so be an adult and make a wise choice. It shows you a diseased lung to scare you into behaving a certain way. I'm not saying which way is right. I'm just saying there are innately different approaches here with different effects on the larger population. During COVID, we had some challenges. We didn't anticipate the waves of misinformation we'd have to fight, or in fact, disinformation. Disinformation is active, intentional efforts to mislead people. That's actually happening on a wide scale right now. And we didn't anticipate the anti-authoritarian impulse that people have not to follow public health guidance. That's been extraordinary. And in many ways, it's been politicized, falls along certain political trajectories. Disinformation campaigns have been weaponized by social media. It's science by YouTube and by meme, because a YouTube video goes a lot further than a scientific paper, as we all know. So if you haven't got the science to back up your position, you create a YouTube video or a meme or something else that's easily shared. So that's the way this information war has been deploying its weapons along those lines. So it may not surprise you to know that this disinformation campaign is backed very often by political enemies. So there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Russia, for example, is behind the spread of COVID disinformation in the USA. Then we have things like this. So a lot of the narrative around the herd immunity approach and other kinds of mostly discredited epidemiological approaches are backed by anti-science money, climate science denial networks, Koch brothers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of this makes it difficult for a simple public health communicator to simply get the message out when so many powerful people are arrayed against us. Here's an example of a meme put forth by an anti-mask person. Right? If you've never worn a mask for the following reasons, common cold, etc., why are you wearing one now? In response, the pro-public health people gave this meme. This is how doctors feel after wearing a mask for 12 hours, and this is how Karens feel after wearing it for 4 minutes. Okay, that's kind of clever. But let's look at that response. What was the purpose of that response? Was it to be combative? Was it to win the argument? Was it to dig in your heels and to be right? Or was it to change minds? Was it really effective? So the challenge of social media is, as I mentioned, YouTube clips reach millions of people in minutes, but actual science reaches like 2 people. A typical scientific peer-reviewed paper is read by 2 people, believe it or not. So it doesn't get the same reach, and it's boring. So we're automatically at a disadvantage. So for me, as an epidemiologist, when I first started doing the math around this pandemic back in February, I collapsed into the fetal position, honestly, because I saw that we're in this for many months, if not years. And I knew that most people didn't realize this. So I started writing about it in my blog, and my first blog post about it, my blog went from 200 readers to 500,000 in 1 week. So I knew there was a thirst for supposedly authoritative public health guidance written in a way that people can access. And that got me on this path of being publicly engaged heavily around COVID commentary. You may remember these idiots, people, sorry. These are 2 Bakersfield doctors who are insisting that we already had herd immunity back in March. They're wrong, obviously, but their YouTube video went viral and was being shared by anyone who had an agenda to promote an anti-science rhetoric. So I wrote a response to them, disentangling and responding to each of their false claims. And this got me attention from American COVID deniers, which led to a lot of abuse, some threats of violence, a lot of things like that. So that is the price we pay now for being public health communicators, using the tools of social media like blogging and podcasting and Twitter, is you are now open to abuse. It's a whole new world out there, fellows. So what do we learn from this? Social media has been weaponized by disinformation merchants, people who want to push an agenda. They capitalize on low science literacy. And this is our way in, right? We educate the public, we inoculate them against bad ideas by giving them the tools to dissect data themselves. They exacerbate the existing political divisions, right? That's why these issues seem to fall along political lines. And the real crisis of our time is distrust in our leaders. So when there's distrust in leadership, then duplicitous forces come in and offer alternative narratives that are seductive. Real science is at a disadvantage because it's boring, and we have to make real science interesting again. So what do we do? Number one, we don't fight anger with anger. And I fail at this all the time because COVID denial makes me quite angry. We smother it with compassion and reason, recognize that people are coming from a place of hurt, and you have to acknowledge that pain first. Data do not compel people. Numbers have never changed anyone's minds. Stories change minds. And that's where social media does well. It tells the story of individuals. It puts forth images of people having experiences. So think about narrative, not information. We can't always respond to misinformation because damage has already been done and it's difficult to roll it back. Memes go far and fast. And just because Facebook takes it down doesn't mean the damage hasn't been done. That means we have to be proactive in flooding social media with accurate and honest and transparent information. Now that COVID vaccines are real, this is our next task, is to, again, inoculate, for lack of a better word, the public against bad ideas around vaccination by preparing them for the tsunami of misinformation that's going to come. So, in conclusion, what we have is a crisis of trust. And how do you build back trust? Using communication tools like social media. One is you refuse to fight. Fighting means you've already lost. You don't win by combating, you win by love, frankly. Always be the adult in the room, right? So be compassionate, listen to people's pain, recognize that once you do that, they're more likely to listen to your arguments. Listen, important, and be transparent about your failures. That's it. If you want to read more about me, my blog is here, and my Twitter account is @Dionandon, and my dog is barking in the background, so hopefully you didn't hear him. That is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So our third presenter is going to be Randy. So for the tech people, maybe we could switch and get Randy up on the screen. Thank you. Awesome. Great to see you.
And you, thank you. So good morning, everyone. My name is Randy Davis. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm coming to you from Barrie, Ontario, which is the traditional unceded territories of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. I am going to, like the previous presenter, share my screen or attempt to share my screen. I'm no longer looking at myself or the presentation. So is it possible, are folks able to see my screen in front of them? Can somebody let me know if the screen's being shared? You can see it?
No, not yet.
No? Okay. Let's try this another way then. How about now? Everyone can see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Excellent. Now I just have to find out how I can go back to the screen I was on to be able to actually move it forward. Apologies, I wasn't aware that I'd be sharing my screen until just a few minutes ago. And now my computer is not letting me get back to the screen I was on to be able to actually move my screen forward. There we go. Okay, so we'll get started. So I want to thank Let's Stop AIDS and the No Time to Wait conference for asking me to participate today. I won't take up too much time, but I was asked essentially to speak on social media activism. My online persona is known as the Accidental HIV Activist. And that came about just a few years ago, actually. I was diagnosed with HIV back in 2015. And it wasn't until 2017, while watching a broadcast on the local news here in Barrie around the AIDS Walk that year, that really sparked the activism in me. And for a lot of activists, that passion gets sparked by anger. For me, it was watching a news presentation on the AIDS Walk, and the individuals locally that were presented had their faces distorted and their names changed so they wouldn't be recognizable. And that really, for me, smacked in the face of what the campaign was all about, trying to dismantle and erase the stigma around living with HIV. And I said to myself at that point, if at that time, 2017, there wasn't someone in Simcoe Muskoka willing to show their face and not be ashamed of the fact that they were living with HIV for obviously a number of different reasons, I sort of felt an obligation that I needed to take on that lead and be that individual. As a cisgendered gay white male of some considerable privilege, I almost felt it as a responsibility to be able to take up that mantle. So the Accidental HIV Activist was born, and I started sharing my story and my disclosure very vocally and proudly. And one of the main avenues to do that for me has been through social media. It was through social media that I actually was able to sort of learn what it meant to be an activist. It's how I connected with folks through the Prevention Access Campaign and the U=U movement. I sit on their international steering committee, and am very proud to count Bruce Richmond, who began the U=U movement, as one of my mentors and good friends now. So social media is very important, and certainly in the realm of the HIV sector, I think it's incredibly important when that activism is peer-led. The whole idea of MIPA and JIPA, the meaningful engagement of people living with HIV and AIDS, and the greater involvement of people living with HIV and AIDS, the whole nothing about us without us, really struck a chord with me. And I've been fortunate enough to be part of other campaigns around HIV activism and stigma. Most notably, I was part of the June's Eatery with Casey House, where I was one of the HIV positive chefs preparing a meal for attendees. I also participated in the Healing Hands Spa, another initiative launched by Casey House a couple of years ago now, where all of us living with HIV were able to give spa treatments to folks who would come in off the street free of charge. So some really great experience in that regard of some one-on-one interactions. But I also, my husband and I were really fortunate to be able to be asked to participate in Katie's Can't Pass It On campaign, which was sort of a Canadian iteration of the Terence Higgins Trust campaign that originated out of the UK around serodiscordant couples, one individual living with HIV and the other HIV negative, and the whole premise of the fact that you cannot pass on HIV to your HIV negative partner if you're on effective treatment and have the care and the access to that treatment to maintain an undetectable viral load, hence U equals U. And it was through these various campaigns that sort of a spark went off in my head. It was about a year and a half ago now. And I love being part of these campaigns and focusing on, the fact that I cannot pass on HIV because I have an undetectable viral load. But it also sort of nagged at the back of my mind, I guess, that all of these campaigns were talking about folks living with HIV and what they can't give you, which is a great message, no doubt about it. And it's an important message that needs to be shared. But I started thinking about all the wonderful things and the people that I've met in the short time that I've been part of this sector that we can give as folks living with HIV. So I literally dreamt this up one evening and woke up the next morning. And I'm one of those people who, when I have a dream, or I don't remember my dreams, if I dream at all, but this one was very vivid for me. And I had the opportunity in April of 2019 to be part of the Ontario AIDS Network's Peer Leadership Development Institute, a leadership camp essentially for folks living with HIV to come together over the course of a weekend. And one of the final parts of this weekend was to organize a group presentation. And the group that I was in voted on me to lead the presentation, and I presented this campaign to this group as something that we could present to the rest of the PLDI attendees. And when we did, there wasn't a dry eye in the room after we presented this, and it was very rough. It was just standing up in front of them with pieces of paper indicating what each of us can give, and the whole concept behind it was using H, I, and V as the words that we use. So that's sort of how the I Can't Give You campaign was launched. It began in August of 2017. The whole idea of COVID and being able to reach out to a wider audience really struck home with me in the work that I do at the Gilbert Center, in having to close our doors to the public and having them actually come into our space. We've had to move all of our programming online. And in doing so, we've had a larger reach at an audience that we wouldn't normally have access to, and for folks who wouldn't normally have access to be able to get into our center. So that sort of inspired me to realize it was time to give this campaign a more fervent attempt at launching. So I began the campaign with just a post of myself that I put on my personal social media, and then shared it on the Facebook page for U equals U, which has got a following of well over 5,000 individuals across the world. And on August 17th, I put this post and this description asking folks if they wanted to get involved in this campaign to submit a picture and their own words. This was not a campaign where I had people asking me to send them the frame to put on their pictures, and I had to let folks know, this isn't a frame. Every H, I, and V word that someone submits are their own words. Whether I feel they may or may not be appropriate isn't what this was all about. It was real people living with HIV, willing to show their faces and talk about all the amazing things that they can give to society. So that's how this campaign launched, with just a photo of me back in August. As of today, there's been 165 posts for this campaign. We've had some great media coverage through both thebody.com as well as pause.com, some really cool articles that have been written about the campaign that have totally taken me by surprise. I had no expectation that the campaign would become as global as it has become. I've had submissions from every continent around the globe, other than Antarctica. I haven't got anyone from Antarctica to send anything in yet. But the campaign has now been launched in France. There's a French edition of the campaign. I've heard from folks in Japan who want to do the campaign. This post you see upper left is the I Can Give You campaign in Armenian. Actually, Ower here, who is in the top right corner, who is going to be presenting, I believe, later today, sort of partnered with me and came up with a Spanish version of the campaign. This is the Japanese version of the campaign. This is actually Mr. Gay Japan, who reached out to me wanting to launch the campaign in Japan. They're going to have a more fervent launch next week around the week leading up to World AIDS Day, and then we've obviously done the campaign in French. There is the version happening in the country of France. This is the French version, sort of the French Canadian version that my friend Carlos asked me to put together for him and his post. And these are just some of the faces of various individuals, all folks who are undetectable and living with HIV from across the globe. And what's really cool about this campaign is that it covers every demographic, and it shows that HIV does not discriminate. We've got Indigenous folks who are part of this campaign. I have non-binary folks who are part of the campaign, trans folks, men, women. Like I say, every possible individual you could think of, young and old, have reached out to me to be part of this campaign. And while, as I said, we currently have 165 posts up on various social media channels, which include Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, I've got another 40 plus posts in the queue waiting to go up. And I wanted this campaign to be impactful, so I make a point of not posting any more than one, maximum 2 posts on social media a day, so that each individual gets the attention that they so richly deserve. And I think it's wonderful to be able to show that the variety of folks living with HIV, and while there aren't a whole lot of H, I, and V words that are descriptive to be interchangeable, I love the fact that there have been a few that have come up with some very unique words. One of them indicated their V word was vavavoom. That was a contribution from Australia. So it's been a great way to be able to get the message out there that stigma is the real disease that we fight. And in the work that I do and the folks that I talk to, both newly diagnosed and long-term survivors of folks living with HIV, one of the real common threads that we have all had stories around stigma that we can relay. That's all I've got. This is me. Again, Accidental HIV Activist. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I do not have Snapchat, but that's it for my presentation. I hope you all enjoyed it. And if you have any questions afterwards, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Randy. So our next panelist is Travis, and I think we'll just get the tech team up. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, yeah, thank you for having me. Pardon me. I'm so happy to be part of No Time to Wait, and I really appreciate having everyone reach out to me to participate. I'm not an epidemiologist or a social worker, just someone who uses social media. Kind of a bit of a backstory about me. I got diagnosed now 3 Halloweens ago. And when I first got diagnosed, I didn't really know kind of what steps to take. So my first steps, other than telling my partner at the time, was to reach out to everyone that I'd known that was HIV positive, that was open about it with me, to get kind of the best way of navigating it. Who better than someone who's lived it, this lived experience. And because of that, I actually have had a lot of support and have been quite fortunate with navigating my HIV. One of the first only symptom I experienced of HIV, which I think a lot of us deal with, was my mental health. You're twice as likely to have depression if you're HIV positive. And when I got my prescription, I kind of saw the price and I was like, first of all, who's affording this? And I started thinking about all the people that pay into keeping me well. And that affected me so deeply because I also, at that point in my life, wasn't really sure what my purpose was or if I had a purpose and if it was viable for people to be spending all this money out of their taxes to keep me healthy. And I knew that that wasn't the truth. And this is a sort of thought pattern I've always kind of defaulted to in tough times, self-worth issues. And I was very lucky to have the doctor that I do that picked up on it, that I was able to have the discussions with, who got me into a psychiatric evaluation. And right before I had that evaluation, I told myself that once I'm mentally well enough to deal with the mixed bag that being open about your HIV status brings, I would try and pay it forward, pay back all of the kindness and resources that all of my friends that were positive linked me to. And I also recognized that I have a lot of privilege in general in life. And even for me, there was moments where I had to really stand up and demand things, and hard enough for me, but even harder for someone with more barriers in the way, and even harder for them to seek out mental health. So that was it. I had my psychiatric evaluation. I started taking exceptional care of my mental and physical health, and randomly in my lap fell the same actually campaign that Randy did with Katie, the U=U campaign, which I did with my partner. And it was kind of like a full circle moment for me, but I didn't have a big following on social media. It wasn't like a huge public thing, other than the fact that it was public. But it like the doctor earlier said, people don't always get the information around health unless they're looking for it. So I try to post it as much as possible. A year down the road, I didn't really know how to participate. I just knew that I wanted to participate in some way. And to be honest, I'm still thinking and trying to figure out the best, most effective way for me to participate in this and to be an advocate and to help fight against stigma. Because I think that's a huge part of what affects our mental health as HIV positive people. It's our perceived stigma, the stigma that we actually experience, and the stigma that we have ourselves. And in a place like Toronto, which is where I live, I feel like a lot of people, especially in the LGBTQS plus community, believe that they don't have stigma anymore. They feel like they're very well educated. But when I became positive, I was probably in the same boat, and I realized that I had so much stigma inside that I wasn't even aware of, because I didn't have the most current or accurate information. And as the epidemiologist earlier, sorry I forgot your name, had said, medicine doesn't have a publicist, so unless you're living with HIV, you probably aren't accessing it. So then I did a show called Canada's Drag Race and was half naked all the time. And I kind of parlayed that into creating a bit of a social media following. And Out Magazine, who featured us, Pit Crew Boys, had seen the Katie campaign that I did and reached out and asked if I wanted to talk about my experience. And at this point, I wasn't sure if that was the most helpful way for me to contribute. But I did the interview anyways. And then I ended up doing one with HIV Plus magazine as well. And as those things came out, it made me more accessible, which I think was the thing that I ultimately wanted as well. The easiest way to pay it forward is to become super public about it. so social media was a great way to do that. And in doing so, it's made me more accountable for my own health, made me figure out how to navigate the system better because, as I said, I've had a pretty good time figuring it out, and also given me access to a larger group of people, a larger community of HIV positive people, which, as was mentioned earlier, is so diverse and so colorful. And I think the HIV positive person is a person that has to be confident and confident in their knowledge of the disease, but also confident in themselves, because when you're public about your status, you face a lot of positivity, which I've experienced, but also a lot of negativity. And social media isn't just Canada, which is the system that I know how to navigate best. It's global, so it gives everyone the opportunity to talk to you. In doing so, I didn't know, and I was very insecure about how a person's conversation and lived experience could benefit drug companies, doctors, other people living with HIV, people not living with HIV, until I got the opportunity to work with the Gay Men's Sexual Health Alliance. And as with anything medical where there's opposing sides, and especially now with facts and medicine and science being politicized and being denied, it's helped to have this experience, because having the discussion with the Gay Men's Sexual Health Alliance, I was able to see that the best way for people to approach us was kindness, but also the best way for us to get them to understand and be curious is kindness. And being out about your status is not something anyone owes anyone. But I will say, from my perspective, it's given people the opportunity that might not have given a shit, or not thought about it, or not looked at the information, to care a little more, like my family, like my closest friends. So that in itself, that small little sphere, has the ability to change so many people's minds. And then to do it on a larger scale and to be given these opportunities, like speaking at this event, has made me realize that this is worthy, and doing social media activism is valuable. There's many ways to participate and contribute, but this is the one that I've taken, and I'm so happy to be here, and it's changed my life and health for the better, and I hope to do the same for other people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Travis. It was wonderful to hear your story. So I think that now we'll move on to some questions from the audience. So our first question is from Rohan, and it's a little bit up in the chat, so I'm just going to paraphrase. But now that a vaccine is imminent, how should public health approach anti-vaxxers? Do you suggest any strategies?
Is this for me, I assume?
It might be.
Okay, cool. I'll take a shot at it. This is a thing that confuses public health people interminably. If I had a magic answer for you, I'd give it, and I don't. I anticipate, though, that this vaccine will have greater demand than hesitancy, at least at first. And the crisis right now is, how do we get it into enough hands of people who want it? But hesitancy will play a role. We have to respect that hesitancy because it's not like other kinds of vaccines. It's brand new. It hasn't been with us for years. So it's not irrational to suggest that unless we've been living with it for a couple of years, we generally do not know the long-term health effects. So the first thing is not mock them. Their hesitancy is actually fairly defensible. But hesitancy is not the same thing as being an anti-vaxxer, to deny that the vaccines work at all. So let's draw a bright line between those two groups, first of all. Those who are hesitant for rational reasons, we can talk to them about the safety data and lay out a plan as more data comes forth. For those who are innately opposed to vaccination on philosophical principles, I don't know how you deal with them. except to double down on the societal level of science education to explain how vaccines work. And from a social media perspective, we have to always combat the misinformation. For example, there is something going around that the new mRNA vaccines will change our genome. That's not true, and that's terrifying people. So, and that's being spread via YouTube video and meme. And so we need YouTube videos and memes to, to combat that kind of misinformation. And we scientists, we never anticipate that people are going to make these conclusions. So we're stupid that way. And it's important that communication professionals really, tell us what are people taking from the message wrongly so that we can respond, and that can be translated into people-friendly language. That's my rambling answer. Sorry.
Oh, thank you so much. So our next session starts in about 6 minutes. So I would like to skip some of the questions that I thought of earlier and kind of just get to the last one. So for all of the panelists, what would you like to see happen in the future on a global scale? And how do you envision connecting with other activists, organizations? What would you like to see?
Who wants to go first? I mean, that's a huge question. You're saying on a global scale?
Yes.
I'm gonna let someone else start.
I'll throw in some 2 cents here, and I agree, Travis. It's a very broad scale question to be able to give an effective answer to. But I think essentially, at least when it comes to HIV, the HIV sector, and more specifically the science around where we are today with treatment, is making sure that I'd love to see a change in the mindset of folks who, just as we see with COVID and the anti-maskers, the denial of science and the science of U equals U, and the fact that someone who is able to have access to treatment and care can indeed achieve an undetectable level of the virus in their system and therefore become undetectable. I mean, this is the foundation for ending the epidemic, and the number of folks out there who still deny that science or deny sharing that message because they feel that folks living with HIV can't understand or aren't responsible enough to be able to stay on medications. That's malpractice in my mind for doctors to not do that. Science, as we know, is highly competitive. And the fact that we have this ironclad science with study after study after study behind it that verifies that an undetectable viral load means you cannot transmit the virus. Anyone who denies that as being a scientific fact in any of the presentations and the work that I do, I simply ask them to show me the science that refutes it. And the bottom line is it's not out there because it doesn't exist. It is an ironclad, solid fact. And what we really need to work on now is making sure that that folks have access to this treatment and care, which brings us to the third U of universal, and ensuring that marginalized populations have the same privilege that I do to be able to actually have the care that keeps me healthy and keeps me from being able to transmit the virus. That's how we end this epidemic. And until we have the political will behind the science to ensure that that happens, then, we can talk all we want about. Initially, when I got involved in the sector, it was ending the epidemic by 2020. Now it's ending the epidemic by 2030. In 2030, I really want that to be the case. I don't want in 2030 us to be talking about ending the epidemic by 2040.
Yeah, I agree so much with what you said about things being accessible, because that's exactly what will achieve that. If everyone's on effective medication and everyone's knowledgeable and everyone's getting tested and not afraid to get tested. That's why these innovations like the at-home testing kit are helpful. People have the privacy of being able to do it on their own time in their own place. The new treatment, which is I think bi-monthly by injection, makes a HIV person who's positive have a more normal life. They're not being reminded every time they take a pill.
It's actually once a month.
Once a month, sorry.
2 injections once a month.
There you go. So all these innovations, I think, are also helpful to achieve that, but they have to be accessible to the people. that actually need them the most vulnerable people. And I think a lot of the times they're marketed to be look that way, but then actually you have to jump through so many hoops in order to access them. So I'd like that sort of the importance of those communities getting on treatment and getting tested, and there being some sort of relaxed approach to it would be super helpful. And then I think also I think a lot of times the experience, like the people that I have reached out to me have not had the same doctor patient experience that I've had. If my doctor doesn't know something, and he's very knowledgeable about HIV, so he usually does, but he won't just sound like he knows. He will figure it out for me. And I think a lot of times doctors, because they have to be the authority, they don't take the time, because one of the times that I sought out a second opinion, I got told different information from my doctor, which I should never have done. My doctor's amazing. And it was because she was relying also on, she was a doctor's law, but she was relying on older information. And that's the thing. Doctors can't be experts on every single thing out there. And it's tough to have to be your own health advocate when you don't know exactly what you're doing, and if your doctor isn't specialized like mine. Also, I think having a path to mental health and seeing the importance in that when someone's diagnosed, I think it needs to be paid more attention to, because there's been so many people that have had HIV for longer than I have and not received the same care in terms of mental health, which I think is kind of a game changer. I wouldn't be able to speak so publicly about my status if I didn't have that.
Thank you. So sorry to cut you off, Reba, but there's only just like a minute left. So just kind of, I think maybe it would be time to wrap up the session. So the next session is how did we get to where we're at? And it's at 12:15, so in about 30 seconds now. So if everybody wants to hop over there. Thank you so much to all of our panelists, and thank you so much to the organizers.